This is the Maximize Your Exit podcast, presented by Transact Capital.
Well, good morning, Ron. Definitely appreciate you stopping by here. And, it was really interesting how we first connected. I think it was through LinkedIn. It was right when I came over to this job. And we connected and said, I think it's worth a meeting. Met for coffee over at the Silver Diner right down the street here. And I was really captivated, one, with your story, and then two, with what you have going on. And then I saw a lot of overlap of, we at Transact Capital, we're hyper-focused on business exit and maximizing the exit for business owners and taking them to market. And then you have a lot of work that you do, prior to that, that was really exciting to me. And the kind of the light bulb went off. I said, I think there's a really good opportunity here to tap into that knowledge, introduce it to our audience of business owners, and see if we can, educate them and help them along their journey. So excited to dive into that. But first, we need to give you a chance to introduce yourself. So take a second here, briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll dive into it.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. And I appreciate you having me on the podcast. And it's great to hear you say you're excited about those things, because I think that's a rare occurrence in the finance world. But my name is Ron Barden. I've been a long-term CFO in a lot of situations over the years. I have over 35 years of experience in the corporate finance and accounting world. And I now provide consulting and advisory services as a CFO to middle market companies. I live here in Richmond, Virginia, with my wife. And I've had the pleasure of working with companies all the way from Boston down to the St. Pete area.
Okay, great. Yeah, and so, Barden Advisors is your company. And really quick, what is that from like a high-level point of view? What do you focus on?
Yeah, so Barden Advisors is me. I'm a solo practitioner. And again, I'm providing CFO services into a variety of situations, actually, but many people would refer to it as fractional CFO work. So I'm actually the CFO of companies on a part-time basis. That's what that means, and I'm full functional CFO for those companies. I've done some interim CFO roles where it's a little different. You come into a situation where there's a gap in the management team. They need to fill that gap as they bridge from a former CFO to the ideal candidate that they're looking for. And so I've done some interim CFO roles, which is a lot of fun and very interesting. Also, I have done some just pure advisory work. So advisory means, being a sounding board, working with an owner or business owner, and working through, their thinking about either strategic matters or tactical matters. And then some technical consulting, where I've jumped into some projects that needed some of my technical expertise to help. It has a beginning and an end, and a pretty well-defined project around that.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah, and you talk about expertise, and this is what I alluded to before, was that captivating story of, how did you get to this point? How did you get to Barden Advisors? And so if you don't mind, let's explore that a little bit. I'd love to hear those stories of your career and how these milestones all stack together to where you woke up and one day you realize, hey, I've got a wealth of knowledge here to pass on. So if you don't mind, let's dive into that real quick.
Yeah, sure. So the key things that sets me apart is my background is unique, and being able to draw from all of those experiences and apply them to a current situation is a real strength. So when I look back over my career, I have sort of the foundational accounting and finance experience that I got through working 10 years in public accounting with Big Four firms, and then another 5 years in the corporate accounting for a large public company. I did my mid-career MBA, and then was able to become the managing director of a pretty large corporate restructuring project. And that really pulled me out of just the accounting and finance area and pulled me into more of the business world, where I had to really work through some fairly complicated business and financial issues and work across multiple stakeholders. So that was really great experience. And then that was followed by working as a CFO for 3 different early stage companies. Again, it's just a unique situation working in a startup. You do a little bit of everything. And the first of those 3 was actually acquired by GE Healthcare. And that was a fun and interesting experience. And I worked with GE Healthcare for 2 years after that acquisition. And then after that, I was then recruited to become the CFO of Intersections. And it was really interesting because Intersections involved a little bit of all that I'd done in the past. It was a public company. It had some restructuring elements. It had invested in some like early stage companies, sort of startups. It had new product development that it was working through. And they were going through a pretty significant transformation program and doing all of that as a public company. So it really was a challenging situation, and it required me to really draw from all of those prior experiences in that one instance. So, and after that transaction was completed, I worked with the buyers, which was a group out of Boston. There was a private equity-backed group for a year after the transaction closed. And then I decided it was time for me to move on and find my next adventure. And as I was taking time to really think through what I wanted to do next, I did come to the conclusion that I am a seasoned CFO. I've been around for a while. I've had a lot of different experiences. And I was thinking through, well, how do I leverage that? Do I look for the perfect CFO job? Or do I go down a consulting path? And about that time, a venture fund that I had worked with previously called and had an interim CFO role that they were looking to fill for one of their more mature portfolio companies. It was a healthcare company in Boston. And this was during COVID, by the way, so it was a remote assignment. And I said, this would be a great opportunity to experiment with the consulting side of this equation, and to see how this works out. So I took that assignment. And what I found was that, I was able to really leverage that experience to go into sort of an unfamiliar situation, although I had some industry experience there, to kind of size up that situation, understand what the client was looking for, and use that background to really execute that engagement. So it was a successful engagement. The client got what they wanted out of that, and it worked out. So after I did that, I was then inspired to launch Barden Advisors and to begin providing these advisory services.
Great. Yeah. I like that a lot. And so it sounds like, as you're brought in, especially nowadays, it's kind of hyper focused on the company has a specific goal, and be that an exit or a debt raise or a restructuring, and that's where again the light bulb went off for me. Was okay, we're working with companies to maximize their exit, and you are working with companies to come in, kind of in the lead up to that, to really help out and get some things organized. And so one is, I'd be curious to hear your process. So let's talk about business exits and say, a hypothetical situation. You're brought into a company, say they're 6 to 12 months out from an exit. Walk me through your thought process, the things that you want to focus on, leading up to then engaging with Transact Capital to really go to market to maximize that value. So,
sure. And I do work in a lot of those situations, have over my career, and also just sort of an ongoing normal business operation modes as well. But whenever I start a project, but in particular in a case like your example, you really have to assess the situation. You have to understand where you are, where the company is, what the goal is, what the timelines are around that. And when I think about that from a finance perspective, you really need to understand what are the capabilities of the finance organization for the company that you're working with, and then you can figure out how you're going to do all the things you need to do to support a transaction. So as I think about financial operations, you could kind of think of it as a pyramid that has layers, and the foundation is the basic bookkeeping, record keeping, transaction tracking. Can you do that timely, accurately, and produce some basic financial reports? The next layer is, are you getting some good financial reporting out of that, consistent GAAP financials, metrics, those types of things? And then I think you really get into the value adds when you start thinking about forecasting, projections, and analytical work to help describe the company and explain what the key drivers are, et cetera. And then finally, is that organization really partnering with the business to help drive decision-making and help strategic planning, et cetera. So I always match up what the capabilities are against sort of that framework. And that's been my experience over many, many years, and it's pretty consistent from company to company as how to look at that. So once we do that, then we need to think about, like, what is the timeline? What are the key things we need to do to support a transaction? And in the case of someone planning for an exit, there's really a few things that at that point you would focus on. So you have the foundation set and you have the quality financial information to start with, but then you need to look at that and say, these are GAAP financial statements, but what's underneath of those statements? Are there unusual items here that may affect how the reported earnings of the company are, what the cash flows of the company are, and look for that type of information behind the numbers to say, do we need to present these in a different way? We want to present the company in the most favorable light possible, obviously, from a earnings and cash flow perspective. But what are those things that we need to adjust and present to potential buyers? That also helps the firms, like the bankers, et cetera, to then estimate what's the value of the company to start with, right? So when you're looking at the financials, you really want to have a good idea of what's the value of the company when we're going into this process. So that's number one. Get the financials, understand what they mean, and make sure that it's in a format that the bankers and others can use to really start to estimate what the value of that business is. Then I think you move into thinking about, can we build a projection for this business? So businesses are acquired really on future earnings, not on the past. So
right.
Taking that information and then building out a set of 3 to 5 year projections is really important. It's going to be vital to the process. And number one, those projections need to be credible. So you need to be able to bridge from this is what we've done in the past to what we're going to do in the future and be able to explain that. It's just really important that you can do that. And then I think probably most importantly, those projections need to support the story of the company. So the bankers, the owners, they're going to put together, what is the story of this business? How are we going to present this to buyers so that we can really convince them they need to pay up for this asset? This is a high quality asset. This is our story. We have great growth prospects and profitability ahead of us. But we need projections that are going to support that. So those two things need to be really in lockstep together and to have a solid package that support one another.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and yeah, that's the message that we spread as well. Is the best company to take to market is a top tier, high performing company, and there's things that you can do in the lead up to that process to really optimize your company, and so bringing in someone like yourself to really hyper focus on those things that you listed is really impactful. But I would be curious to hear, from your point of view, what's the why, what's the reason, what are the key things to take away from that list that you just went over of these are the action items to work on. To you, what are the main drivers of this is the reason why, this is the value it's going to add, to act on those items?
Yeah, sure. So, let's face it, many businesses are deploying all their capital in growth, and that's the right decision. And a lot of times they're underinvested in the finance area. So when they begin a process like this, there is some catch-up work to do on the finance side and to be able to pull all these things together. And I think it's really important for business owners, especially ones that have not been through an exit or a transaction before, to understand that when you are in a process and you really want to maximize the value, there's some really key benefits to really putting in the effort to get the financial side ready to support this process. And honestly, I think number one is to minimize and avoid surprises. So if you go through the process, pull together the financials, you do the analysis, you work through projections, one, you're going to expose some things that maybe you hadn't thought about before in the business that you can then address and shore up. And it's a lot better to find those things early in the process than later. So, when you're early in the process, the deal team can all get on the same page. They know the numbers. Everybody's working off of the same set of numbers and understand them, and you can work through those issues. You don't want these surprises to come up after you get into the process. So, it always happens, things come up, but to minimize surprises is a real benefit here. And then secondly, I think you can build credibility with buyers early in the process if, particularly if the owner really knows the numbers, can articulate that, this financial support, the numbers that they're explaining to the potential buyers and presenting. So it really helps to build that credibility up front. And again, I think these are all little things that help you get the maximum value in the transaction. So, sort of on the heels of that is, as you pull these things together in a quality way, it can help reduce perceived risk on the other side. So when they have confidence in the numbers, they can feel good about what they're hearing, the stories that they're hearing about the company, and it provides them some comfort, as opposed to if there's a lot of things changing, there's a lot of surprises coming up, then they start to wonder, hey, are there other things that we need to worry about here? And so again, little things that can help, hopefully move you up in the valuation range around the company.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and yeah, it's it's the human element. It's the you're interacting on the other side of the table as a buyer that is human, and like you said, it goes beyond just numbers and producing numbers. It goes to, like you said, the quality of the numbers and really telling the story and identifying and mitigating risk on their part. So yeah, I definitely like that, and very much in agreement. So a little shifting of gears here as you look ahead, with the company and personally, what does the future look like for you?
Yes, thanks for asking. So, it's been very fulfilling working with my clients in this capacity. So it's been a lot of fun being able to draw on those experiences and see their businesses achieve goals, make progress, and work through those things. So, like I said, that's just been very fulfilling and enjoyable to work with a lot of great people, both the clients and the other professionals that they utilize. So, I'm looking to work with more folks like that, business owners, middle market companies that have growth aspirations, and that are looking to, bring on someone with experience. They can get a seasoned CFO like myself to come in and help them put the things in place that they need to for their business. So I like to allocate more of my time to situations like that. They're more recurring and ongoing. And again, we talked about transaction readiness. So part of my approach to almost all situations, because my past has always had to do this, is I always, in my mind, I'm thinking, we need to always be prepared for transactions. Maybe there's nothing on the horizon short term, but we want to be ready. So I really enjoy getting in and helping put in the right things, the right size for that company, and so just to make sure that they are ready to take advantage of growth opportunities and other opportunities that come along. I also reserve part of my schedule for other advisory and consulting projects that may come out of my referral network. So I like to take on interesting projects, challenging projects sometimes that pop up and need some immediate attention. So I try to reserve time in my schedule to do that as well.
great. Yeah, that's exciting, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch. But I mean, these are great insights. I definitely appreciate it. So excited to pass these on to our audience, and look, like I said, look forward to staying in touch. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
This
Appreciate
is the
it.
Maximize Your Exit podcast, presented by Transact Capital.